many gardeners also have pets in addition to plants, and I happen to be one of them. And I'd like for you to meet Badger, who's an 8-month-old Border Collie Australian Shepherd cross, who's primarily an outdoor dog. But you know, this time of year, many of the gardeners, we start bringing in our plants and doing a lot of seasonal decorations, and it actually can increase the chances of pet poisonings. So recently we invited Dr. George Burrows to join us and ask him the question, are pet poisonings a problem due to plants?
Well, I think it can be a problem. Probably it's not of a particularly serious nature most of the time. There would be occasionally a serious intoxication from a few plants, but in general, I think that dogs respond to eating foreign objects like plants and that sort of thing by vomiting quite commonly, maybe just once or twice, nothing very alarming. Occasionally there might be a little bit of excess salivation that might cause an owner to be a little bit concerned, but in general there's not going to be much in the way of clinical signs with most plants. I think it's persistent vomiting. If they vomit repeatedly for, say, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, I think that that ought to alarm an owner, and they probably should take action when that sort of thing happens. And maybe very serious salivation or perhaps even depression if the animal appears to be depressed after, almost like it was sedated. If there is persistent vomiting and you become concerned, you probably ought to try to collect that vomitus. If you can, put it in a plastic bag, a Ziploc bag, and take that into your veterinarian if it turns out to be something that's of a serious nature. I think probably the most reasonable thing would be to call a veterinarian and relay the clinical signs, possibly the plant, if somebody knows what that particular plant. The veterinarian can make contacts to find out what kinds of problems are potentially relevant to that particular plant, and then possibly take action, because that can all be done very quickly through the veterinarian, because he's going to know the phone numbers to call, or he may be familiar with the problem himself. Well, I think probably the plant that we would be most concerned about would be Japanese yew or English yew. If it's brought into the house as an ornamental at Christmas time, as an evergreen, that would probably represent a fairly significant hazard for either a dog or a cat. Probably at Easter time, the Easter lily, the common Easter lily that we have here that's sold in most of the stores, does represent a hazard, particularly in cats, and there we have a potential problem of kidney failure. So those would probably be the two most serious, and then secondary to that would probably be the Dieffenbachia, philodendron, devil's ivy, calla lily, that sort of thing, where they run the potential problems of maybe excess salivation, irritation around the mouth, and the esophagus, maybe some vomiting. Usually those are self-limiting and they don't go beyond that, but in a particular case they might get enough of that plant to produce more serious problems. Yes, if they store any of the bulb-type plants, including the rhizomatous plants like iris, the underground portions particularly, if those are stored in the garage, puppies in there, gets bored, chews on those, there is a very serious risk of intoxication. We've had an occasional death related to particularly the iris underground portions. There are a lot of other plants where we have anecdotal stories about these plants, and some of these stories are nearly 100 years old, and we still repeat them with propagating the danger. And probably poinsettia has relatively minor risk associated with this plant. You could get maybe a little bit of salivation, and if they got the milky juice in their eyes, they could have quite a bit of irritation. Probably mistletoe belongs in the same category. There's really not much evidence that it represents a serious hazard. But in general, most of these kinds of plants are not going to be serious problems in pets. But they can, even azalea, if it's brought into the house, particularly in the spring when they're flowering, represents somewhat of a hazard. But for the most part, it's really not a serious problem associated with those. Not around here.
A little-known feature in Stillwater behind the OSU Vet College is a poisonous plant garden, and Dr. Burrows tells us more about this unique feature.
Well, this was a garden that was developed in concert with the Centennial Oklahoma State University and was developed in honor of Dr. Dwayne Peterson, who was a longtime faculty member here. The garden was developed initially in about 1988 with the idea of providing a setting for the students to be able to visualize plants in their, somewhat in their typical type of habitat, and to be able to try to differentiate these plants one from another, and also provide a setting for clients for the teaching hospital and the diagnostic laboratory to be able to look at plants that might be involved with intoxications. These represent primarily plants that are a threat for livestock rather than pets, but there are a few in here that would also be problems occasionally with pets. We've tried to have the garden arranged in a manner to simulate the geographic representations in the state. So if you go to the northeastern corner of the garden, it's plants from that part of the state. The southwestern portion of the garden representing plants that would be a threat in that part of the state. You can appreciate that some plants grow all over the state, so we've had to pick one spot for them, so you have to kind of differentiate that. We have ornamentals represented. We also have plants that are not indigenous to the state of Oklahoma, but that would be of interest to the students. So these are also represented. We've tried to have a fairly broad spectrum. We probably have about 140 different plants represented through the course of the year. Of course, those are not all represented at any one time, so that we can provide a teaching environment throughout the year.
Come on, come on, come on. So the next time that you're in Stillwater visiting the Oklahoma Gardening Studios, you may also want to stop by the Poisonous Plant Garden, which is just south of the Vet Teaching Hospital right here in Stillwater on the OSU campus. Good boy, good boy.